On March 17, 1943, at Tirpitzufer 76-78 in Berlin, the heavy folder crashed down upon the polished mahogany surface of the desk, causing a spray of coffee to leap from Admiral Wilhelm Canaris's delicate porcelain cup and soak into the sensitive intelligence documents, papers whose mere existence could spell death at the hands of the Gestapo if they ever came to light. Unthinkable. The United States must be disseminating falsehoods via double agents they've flipped. Gazing out from the high windows of the Abwehr's central offices, Canaris's eyes fell upon the Landwehr Canal, the very spot where, a quarter-century prior, the remains of Rosa Luxemburg had been discarded. In his current position as head of Germany's military intelligence service, he clutched a document in his unsteady grasp, one that undermined far more than mere Nazi rhetoric, striking at the very numerical underpinnings of the Reich's anticipated triumph. Intercepted messages and dispatches from spies continuing their work in Mexico City revealed that the Willow Run facility of Ford Motor Company churned out a single B-24 Liberator bomber, equipped with 4 engines, each and every hour. This formidable B-24 Liberator came together from 1.5 million distinct parts, 450,000 rivets, and 30,000 individual components, forming an 18-ton flying machine that emerged from the production line at a pace outstripping Germany's ability to manufacture even a basic Kubelwagen troop carrier. At rigid attention in front of Canaris's desk stood Major Friedrich Wilhelm Heinz, who had meticulously verified the information 3 times over. The figures stayed constant. Unbeknownst to either individual, this instant would ignite the gravest lapse in espionage during contemporary conflict, a persistent shortfall in German reconnaissance to grasp, accept, or properly relay the immense extent of U.S. manufacturing prowess to the Nazi High Command, sealing the Third Reich's fate with a catastrophic error engaging the inescapable logic of arithmetic. The breakdown in German assessment of American output had taken root 2 years before. During 1941, Luftwaffe commander Karl Koller delivered to Hermann Göring intelligence gathered by military liaison Friedrich von Boettcher from his post in Washington, which indicated that U.S. airplane manufacturing was nearing 2,000 units each month. Göring responded with outright laughter, insisting that Americans excelled merely at producing household appliances like refrigerators and grooming tools such as razor blades, but lacked the skill for warplanes. At the Wolfshanse retreat in December 1941, just 4 days following the Pearl Harbor assault, Göring assured Hitler that the Americans were merely posturing. The democratic system of the United States renders it vulnerable. Its diverse, mixed populace leads to operational slowness. The influence of its Jewish citizens fosters dishonesty. Such a nation could never achieve the output it boasts. Yet by March 1943, intelligence gathered by German operatives throughout the Americas was delivering news that shattered the foundations of Nazi ideology on race and industrial capacity. These dispatches arrived from varied channels: factory owners in Mexico who leaned toward the Axis cause, envoys from Spain, merchants from Sweden passing through the Detroit area, and even captured correspondence from U.S. laborers addressed to family members in non-belligerent lands. Every one of them conveyed the very same astonishing revelation. At Ford's Willow Run facility by itself, the production of heavy bombers surpassed the total yield from every single aircraft plant in Germany. Lieutenant Colonel Nikolaus Ritter, who led the Abwehr's air intelligence division known as Abteilung für Luft, devoted 3 full weeks to scrutinizing the gathered information. Having once piloted for Lufthansa and resided in the United States for a decade prior to the conflict, Ritter possessed a deeper insight into America's manufacturing prowess than nearly any other officer in the German forces. From his Manhattan residence in the 1920s, he had a direct view of the Chrysler Building rising skyward. He observed how the Americans managed to complete what became the planet's highest structure in under 2 years' time. Addressing Canaris as Herr Admiral, Ritter conveyed his assessment. Should these figures prove accurate, and he was convinced of their reliability, then the war was already beyond Germany's grasp. From this point, victory would hinge solely on calculations and the passage of time. The reports arrived via convoluted pathways, growing riskier with every twist. In Mexico City, Georg Nikolaus oversaw the Abwehr's chief espionage operation and had carefully nurtured contacts within a circle of U.S. entrepreneurs who moved without hindrance between Detroit's factories and the oil-rich regions of Mexico. During meals, these individuals would offhandedly describe the astonishing feats they had seen, oblivious to the fact that their words were being secretly recorded by operatives working for the Germans. In the midst of World War II, on February 3, 1943, Harold Morrison, a prominent American oil executive, found himself at a social gathering hosted by the German-Mexican Commerce Association in Mexico City. Loosened by a few rounds of tequila, he soon launched into an account of his latest visit to the Willow Run plant, a trip orchestrated by Ford to demonstrate to prospective backers how effectively the firm could deliver on its obligations to the government. Addressing the group as gentlemen, Morrison spoke freely, oblivious to the fact that Wolfgang Blaum, a covert operative from Germany masquerading as an Argentine trader in leather goods, was committing each detail to memory. "What I saw defies description," he declared. "The assembly line stretches more than a mile." The factory's immense scale allows clouds to gather beneath its roof, occasionally leading to rain falling right inside the structure. A workforce of 42,000 employees operates there, encompassing thousands of women, including Negro women, all contributing to the assembly of history's most intricate machine. Morrison reached for a pencil and started drawing on a nearby napkin. This bomber features 2 bomb bays capable of carrying 4,000 pounds of ordnance apiece, along with 4 engines that deliver 200 horsepower each. Assembly happens through modular components, sub-assemblies, as Ford terms them, that merge together much like tributaries joining a mighty ocean. Wings come in from one angle, fuselages from a different path, and tail units from yet another, all aligning exactly where needed on the production line. Blaum posed the question with feigned nonchalance, yet the sheer intricacy must surely bring about regular malfunctions and setbacks in output. Morrison chuckled in response. That was the view held by Consolidated Aircraft. They ridiculed Ford, insisting that aircraft couldn't be manufactured the way automobiles were. Ford, however, dismantled the bomber's construction into 60,000 distinct steps. Every employee repeats a single specific function endlessly. Consider a woman who, just the day before, prepared meals for her kids. Today, she fits hydraulic tubing into the tail assembly. Workers receive their training in mere days rather than drawn-out periods of months. The most intricate espionage details likely flowed via the regime of Francisco Franco in Spain. As the Spanish military attaché stationed in Washington, Colonel José Ungrier cultivated strong ties with U.S. aircraft producers, all while covertly relaying vital information to Germany to secure shipments of tungsten essential for Spain's industrial needs. During a gathering at the Argentine embassy in March 1943, Ungrier encountered Charles Sorensen, who served as Ford's head of production and the mastermind behind the Willow Run facility. Assuming he was conversing with an envoy from a neutral country potentially interested in post-war aircraft acquisitions, Sorensen openly discussed the factory's operations. "Colonel," he remarked, oblivious to the fact that his remarks would reach Berlin in just a fortnight. On my initial tour of the consolidated plant in San Diego back in 1940, they assembled B-24s in the open air under the sun, with every plane varying from its predecessor and demanding 180,000 man-hours apiece. I realized there was room for improvement. Posing as a fellow military engineer with a keen professional curiosity, Ungrier urged him for more specifics. Eager to showcase his success, Sorensen willingly shared them. During a single evening in my San Diego hotel room, I mapped out the complete assembly process. Our approach to constructing bombers would mirror automobile manufacturing, eschewing the method where laborers crowd around a fixed plane. Instead, the plane itself would travel along a line of fixed laborers. Every laborer would handle designated duties over and over, attaining mastery via constant practice. The Spanish officer had inquired about the labor difficulties posed by this intricate setup. In response, Sorensen noted that we established a training academy for apprentices, instructing 8,000 employees each week. Females make up 40% of our labor pool. In fact, they excel in precision-oriented jobs. Their compact fingers suit confined areas, and they show greater endurance for monotonous routines. African American employees handle advanced equipment. We even entrust 16-year-old youths with overseeing material distribution. Colonel, true democracy involves harnessing every possible talent from the population. German intelligence agents gathered reliable intelligence on Willow Run's output through intermediaries in Sweden, Argentina, Japan, and Turkey. In March 1943, Erik Lundberg, a Swedish engineer, toured the facility and observed that its operations displayed a level of productivity beyond the grasp of European norms. He noted the deployment of 1,600 dedicated machine tools, with numerous ones tailored exclusively for specific tasks. The financial outlay proved immense, likely reaching $200 million just for the tooling. An intercepted coded dispatch from Japanese Commander Toshikazu Omai to Tokyo, captured by German operatives, offered separate corroboration. It stated that this one plant manufactured more planes each month than the whole of Japan's aircraft sector. By April 1943, the Germans had compiled thorough information from 17 distinct sources, all validating the facility's production pace. The production figures were astonishing. At its height, the Willow Run facility churned out 650 B-24 bombers each month, while the overall U.S. output for B-24s surpassed 1,400 units per month. Eager for reliable on-the-ground verification, Canaris greenlit Operation Pastorius, a plan to deploy saboteurs into the United States by submarine. George John Dash, who commanded one of the two teams consisting of 4 men each, had spent 2 decades residing in the United States prior to his move back to Germany in 1939. From Canaris, he received confidential directives to first collect data on airplane manufacturing prior to launching any acts of sabotage. Just past midnight on June 13, 1942, Dash and his group disembarked from U-202 and came ashore in the pre-dawn darkness at Amagansett on Long Island. Mere days later, overwhelmed by the gravity of his assignment and his first-hand awareness of America's industrial might, Dash turned himself over to the FBI. In the course of his questioning, he shared a detail that left his U.S. interrogators in shock. Canaris personally confided to me that Berlin refuses to accept your reported production numbers. Skeptics dismissed the Willow Run facility as mere fabrication. Canaris demanded visuals, workforce numbers, and delivery logs, irrefutable evidence to compel Göring to confront the truth. You're telling me they refuse to accept that we're churning out a bomber every hour? FBI Special Agent Charles Landman inquired in disbelief. Dash responded with a harsh chuckle. Agent Landman, this is my home turf. I've witnessed your auto plants in action. I attempted to convince them that since Ford managed a vehicle off the line every minute in peacetime, wartime demands would surely enable a bomber every hour. Instead, they branded me a pessimist. It was April 20th, 1943, Hitler's 54th birthday, when Canaris himself delivered the dossier to Göring at Karenhall, the Reichsmarshal's lavish retreat for hunts situated north of Berlin. That encounter would gain notoriety in German espionage circles, due to Göring's utter denial of the facts. Canaris arrived equipped with images, seized papers, and accounts from numerous informants. He laid them out on Göring's enormous oak desk, much like a gambler revealing a hand destined for defeat. Reichsmarschall, Canaris started with measured words, we possess verification from 17 distinct channels. The Ford Willow Run operation is yielding a single B-24 Liberator each hour during its maximum output. Since January, they had sustained this output level without interruption. At that juncture in the conflict, Göring, now tipping the scales at more than 280 pounds, lifted a photograph that captured the assembly line extending far into the horizon. Canaris, he sneered with disdain, are you under the impression that I am a simpleton? Those are plainly wooden replicas, mere staging for publicity stunts. The Americans aim to convince us they're cranking out planes as effortlessly as links of sausage. In reality, this Willow Run facility likely turns out no more than 50 bombers each month. Canaris then retrieved a further record, a seized cargo roster from the Pennsylvania Railroad that outlined deliveries of aluminum. Observe this, Reichsmarschall, he noted, where they're devouring 16 million pounds of aluminum per month in just this facility alone. That surpasses our nation's complete monthly yield. Göring responded with a rough, mocking guffaw. And precisely from where are they sourcing all that aluminum? They're black laborers? A week after that skeptical retort, from their women riveters. Canaris, you've been deceived by American propaganda. The admiral found himself called to the Wolfschanze to deliver a direct report to Hitler. Present at the gathering were Generals Jodl and Keitel, alongside Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels. As Hitler pored over charts of the Eastern Front, where the Wehrmacht geared up for Operation Citadel, the clash at Kursk, he grew visibly restless while Canaris laid out the gathered intelligence. Mein Führer, Canaris ventured, fully aware that his words courted mortal danger. If the Americans continue churning out 400 B-24s each month, matched by an identical tally of B-17s, not to mention their fighters and the output from Britain, then the bombing raids over the Reich will shortly overwhelm what defenses we can muster." True to form, Hitler fired back with disdain. "Admiral, those Americans excel at churning out basic items in vast quantities, cars, refrigerators, the like, but building a bomber demands far more, exacting craftsmanship, expertise, unwavering commitment. We ourselves needed 6 full years to ready for conflict, yet they boast of pulling it off in a mere 16 months. Such a feat defies belief." General Alfred Jodl carefully examined the data presented by Canaris and performed his own computations. "Suppose we regard just a fourth of these numbers as reliable," he began. "Those numbers are fabricated," Hitler cut in abruptly. "The United States only joined the conflict back in December 1941. It's inconceivable that they could have constructed such an extraordinary facility and reached those levels of output in so short a period." Unbeknownst to the top Nazi officials, Canaris had acquired actual video recordings of the Willow Run plant functioning, courtesy of U.S. spy connections based in Switzerland. Transported secretly inside diplomatic bags from Spain, the footage captured a 5-minute segment of the production line running at peak efficiency. In a securely sealed chamber at the Abwehr's central offices, Canaris and his assistant, Hans Oster, viewed the recording. The lens followed the full length of the 1-mile conveyor system. B-24 bombers, at various points in their assembly process, glided by with consistent rhythm. Laborers, both male and female, of all races, executed their duties with unerring exactitude. In multiple frames, a timepiece appeared, verifying the sequence's duration. "Good heavens," Oster murmured softly. "It really is happening." With his cigarette lighter, Canaris set the reel ablaze, observing as the flames consumed it. In the shadows of wartime secrecy, revealing such evidence to the higher-ups would invite charges of fabricating illusions or outright disloyalty. During November 1943, operatives from German intelligence came into possession of overhead images of the Willow Run facility, captured by a Spanish envoy. For several weeks, experts pored over these snapshots. Their findings painted a stark picture. Vast parking areas held roughly 12,000 vehicles, a clear sign of round-the-clock shifts running in triplicate. At the nearby airstrip, finished B-24 bombers stood poised, with 47 planes primed for handover. Glimpses of the production line shone through the roof's transparent panels, revealing planes positioned precisely as informants had described. Along the rail lines, numerous cargo wagons unloaded supplies in abundance. Hauptmann Werner Zahn documented his assessment, declaring that the visuals solidly backed up reports from spies on the ground. The output levels seemed spot on. He urged a prompt overhaul of bombing priorities. When presented with the images, Göring brushed them aside, labeling them as slick tricks from American photo experts, likely staged with miniature replicas. Dr. Albert Speer, serving as Hitler's minister for armaments and the sole Nazi official who truly grasped the mechanics of mass manufacturing, quietly accessed details from American sources on the matter. Post-war discoveries unearthed his journal note from May 15, 1943, exposing a profound sense of doom. Should the Willow Run numbers hold even partial validity, our fate isn't mere loss, it's total obliteration. In just 1 month, they churn out more planes than our factories manage across an entire year. Yet voicing this reality remains impossible for me. Executing such a plan would seal my fate. As the leader of SD Inland and an economist by training, Dr. Otto Ohlendorf examined data on the U.S. economy. In his December 1943 briefing to Himmler, the findings were grim. Back in 1941, during peacetime, Ford Motor Company had manufactured 1.1 million vehicles. Now, that same output has shifted toward building bombers. Continuing at the present pace, the United States would generate sufficient B-24s by June 1944 to unleash the full weight of Germany's 1940 raids on London, once each day. Intelligence arrived for Canaris on Christmas Eve 1943, detailing U.S. forecasts for aircraft output in 1944. 18,000 B-24 Liberators, 12,000 B-17 Flying Fortresses, 1,000 B-29 Superfortresses, and 40,000 fighter planes, amounting to a grand total of 86,000 units. Upon reviewing these numbers, Hitler dismissed them outright, declaring that the Americans' assertion of outproducing every nation's historical total in just 1 year was utterly ridiculous. In early February 1944, Canaris found himself ousted from his role, with accusations of defeatism and treason hanging over him. Stepping in as his successor was Walter Schellenberg, a steadfast Nazi devotee who lacked the nerve to challenge Hitler or Göring. Yet the harsh truths of the war could not be brushed aside indefinitely. During what became known as Big Week, on February 20, 1944, the U.S. 8th Air Force initiated Operation Argument, unleashing more than 1,000 heavy bombers on factories producing German aircraft. Over the course of those 6 days, the tonnage of bombs unleashed surpassed everything the Luftwaffe had rained down on Britain throughout the whole Blitz. To Göring, Luftwaffe ace Adolf Galland remarked, "Herr Reichsmarschall, I've counted over 800 bombers in a single formation. These planes are real, and they're dropping real bombs." Then, on June 6, 1944, more than 11,000 Allied planes filled the skies above France, while the Luftwaffe scraped together barely 300 fighters to counter them. From the front, Feldmarschall Hugo Sperl dispatched an urgent plea to Berlin. "The enemy's aerial superiority is absolute. Our intelligence was correct. We were deceived not by the Americans, but by ourselves." Come April 1944, the Willow Run facility hit its highest output level. In that period, with staff operating in 2 shifts of 9 hours each across 6 days weekly, they assembled 453 aircraft within 468 hours, translating to a completed B-24 Liberator rolling out every 63 minutes. The operation relied on 42,331 employees, among them 11,000 women, who made up 26% of the total staff. In the Willow Run plant, African Americans numbered 3,800, comprising 9% of the total workforce, while 200 workers with disabilities made up another 3%. Such a composition would have utterly demolished the Nazi doctrine of racial superiority. Groups deemed inferior and physically unfit were surpassing the so-called Aryan master race in productivity by vast margins. Once the conflict ended, German intelligence survivors disclosed the extent of this monumental oversight. During the Nuremberg trials, Walter Schellenberg gave testimony, admitting that by the beginning of 1943, they had grasped the reality of U.S. manufacturing capabilities. Any seasoned spy recognized the reliability of those figures, yet conveying them could lead to a death sentence on charges of undermining morale. In his post-war account, Hans Bernd Gisevius reflected on the irony. The real issue wasn't a shortage of data on American output. They were overwhelmed by it. Instead, the downfall lay in the regime's top echelons dismissing the evidence because it clashed with their beliefs about racial hierarchy. Those in German intelligence who dared to relay the facts faced severe repercussions. On April 9, 1945, Admiral Wilhelm Canaris met his end by execution at Flossenburg concentration camp, as did Hans Oster on the same date and site. Alexis von Rohr suffered execution in October 1944 due to his role in the July 20th assassination attempt. Hans Bernd Gisevius, however, managed to flee to Switzerland and endure through the war's close. The post-war United States Strategic Bombing Survey validated the assessments from German sources. From 1942 to 1945, Willow Run churned out 8,085 B-24 bombers, reaching a high of 650 planes per month. This pace of one aircraft per hour held steady over extended periods. Meanwhile, the expense for each bomber fell from $238,000 down to $137,000. When interrogated after the war, Albert Speer was pressed on Germany's reluctance to credit reports of American industrial might. He explained that acknowledging Ford's ability to assemble a bomber hourly would force a reckoning. Their whole ideology had been flawed, and democracy proved resilient rather than frail. The notion that intermingling of races fostered not frailty, but resilience. The idea that females were capable of handling tasks traditionally reserved for males. Such realizations would force an acknowledgement that the conflict we had initiated was one destined for inevitable defeat. Who could possibly convey that truth to Hitler? Rose Wilman Rowe, who served as the actual model for the iconic Rosie the Riveter figure, wielded a rivet gun along the assembly line for B-24 bombers. Along with countless other women just like her, she had no prior experience in factory settings until after the attack on Pearl Harbor. We understood that our efforts were contributing to a vital cause, Monroe recounted during a 1984 conversation. Each rivet we hammered in was advancing the effort to bring the war to a close. At times, we pulled double shifts, catching rest in the parking lot during the breaks between them. In the skies above the battlefields, our brothers, husbands, and sweethearts piloted these aircraft with courage. The refusal to accept reports on Willow Run's capabilities brought devastating outcomes. Efforts in fighter manufacturing fell short. Even into the closing months of 1944, Germany persisted in churning out bombers. Decisions on resource distribution went awry, with funds squandered on experimental superweapons rather than reliable protective measures. Tactics and strategy were devised to counter mere hundreds of incoming bombers, overlooking the reality of thousands. Shortcomings in diplomacy arose as well, with proposals for peace held back by a failure to grasp the inevitability of total loss. Upon examining seized papers, German financial experts uncovered the immense scope and expense of Willow Run, which tallied $200 million. The sum total invested by Germany in its whole aviation sector from 1933 to 1945 came to an equivalent of $400 million. The expanse of Willow Run's production floor reached 3.5 million square feet. When combined, every factory in Germany's aircraft network spanned 8 million square feet. Each month, Willow Run drew 2.5 million kilowatts of electricity. Through this one vast American facility, the United States harnessed more power and materials than whole cities in Germany could muster. As the conflict drew to a close, the complete picture emerged in the post-war reckoning. Across the war, 18,188 B-24s rolled off assembly lines in total. Of those, Willow Run alone assembled 8,685. The overall tally for B-17s stood at 12,731. From 1940 through 1945, American output encompassed the full range of aircraft produced. In the realm of World War II aviation output, stark contrasts emerge: 3,717. Over the span from 1940 to 1945, Germany manufactured 94,700 aircraft in total. By comparison, America surpassed this by a multiplier of 3.2, accomplishing such feats amid a grueling campaign across two vast oceans. Scholars of military history deem the Third Reich's oversight concerning U.S. industrial might as among the most pivotal lapses in espionage ever recorded. The problem did not stem from deficient reconnaissance efforts. Instead, Nazi operatives procured reliable and in-depth data. The true shortfall came in the unwillingness to embrace those findings. Leaders often dismiss reports that challenge their established perspectives. As historian Dr. Gerhard Weinberg observed, by the beginning of 1943, German spies had correctly evaluated the United States' industrial output potential. If that assessment had been accepted and heeded, the Nazi regime could have pursued negotiations for an armistice as early as 1941, potentially averting the deaths of countless individuals. This episode offers deep insights into human and institutional shortcomings. Mental predispositions can cause even reliable information to be ignored when it clashes with deeply held convictions. Doctrinal rigidity may allow partisan convictions to eclipse undeniable factual evidence. Organizational breakdowns occur when analytical networks suppress inconvenient facts in favor of reassuring fabrications. Critical oversights in judgment arise from downplaying adversaries, resulting in devastating consequences. During the 1985 opening ceremony for the Yankee Air Museum located at Willow Run, Rose Will Monroe, a veteran Rosie the Riveter, encountered Hans Rudel, a retired pilot from the Luftwaffe. When Rudel inquired about the secret behind constructing such a vast number of aircraft in record time, Monroe replied simply, "Darling, we showed up to work each day and carried out our duties. No frills involved. Just clock in, assemble the bombers, and clock out." She added that democracy holds no complexities. It boils down to ordinary citizens giving their all in freedom. Rudel then reflected, "We had been fed the notion that your democratic system bred weakness, and that your varied workforce led to wastefulness. Those falsehoods we swallowed cost millions of lives." Amid the devastation of Berlin in May 1945, U.S. intelligence personnel uncovered one last German assessment of Willow Run, penned on April 20, 1945, Adolf Hitler's final birthday. The document affirmed Willow Run's output as genuine, noting that this fact had been relayed 2 years prior. Yet it fell on deaf ears. Germany's collapse stemmed not from any shortfall in information, but from the folly of dismissing reports that clashed with our preferred illusions. May coming generations take heed. Facts refuse to conform to dogma. Numbers stand firm against fables. Overlooked verity turns into catastrophe. That assessment never reached its intended audience. At that point, Hitler hunkered down in his underground lair. The so-called 1,000-year empire teetered on its last breaths, and a fleet of thousands of U.S. bombers, countless ones forged at Willow Run, brought home the very point that German analysts had vainly urged upon their leaders 2 years before. History's judgment stands unequivocal. The quality of German espionage stood unmatched in its effectiveness. Yet, the refusal to embrace those findings proved utterly disastrous. Within that dismissal of harsh realities resides a profound lesson for every country. Truth remains indifferent to personal convictions. Nations that reject facts in pursuit of dogmatic convictions will inevitably fall victim to the very forces they ignore. Beyond assembling aircraft, Willow Run demonstrated the vitality of democratic systems, the power of inclusivity to fortify societies, and the innovative force unleashed by liberty. Agents of the Reich tallied every single one, but the regime's commanders dismissed them entirely. That denial sealed the fate of the Third Reich with the same inevitability as the explosives that rained down.